Behold how good it is, and how pleasant when brethren dwell in unity.
This week we are reading the 29th weekly Torah portion, Leviticus 16:1 to 18:30. This portion is titled Acharei mot, which means after the death. The narrative picks up right after the burial of Aaron's two sons, Nadav and Avihu. These chapters cover the practices and priestly rituals surrounding Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement. The portion is read in synagogues as part of the services every year on Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the absolute holiest day on the Jewish calendar, and it is on Yom Kippur that three concentric spheres of holiness merge. The high priest on the most sacred day of the year enters the most hallowed space on earth to make a sacrifice and pronounce the holy name of God. On any other day, by any other person, and in any other place, saying the name of Yahweh was prohibited. However, as Nadav and Avihu's example proved, no one treads spontaneously into the Holy of Holies. On Yom Kippur, Leviticus instructs Aaron was to bathe and dress in his priestly linen vestments. He then sacrificed a bull for the atonement of himself and his household. What comes next in the 16th chapter is, in my opinion, one of the most mysterious portions of the whole Torah. Aaron brought two goats similar in size and appearance to the entrance of the tabernacle. Lots were cast to determine the fate of each goat. One lot was inscribed to the Lord, and the other said to Azazel. The goat who was to the Lord was sacrificed on the altar, and the Azazel goat was escorted into the wilderness and released. On every other day of sacrifice, the priest confesses the sins of the people over the animal to be placed on the altar. On Yom Kippur, however, Aaron was commanded to lay both hands on the live goat's head and confess the nation's sins. The dispatched goat was led by someone appointed to the task to a remote place in the wilderness. This is what we know from the Bible about the Yom Kippur service during the tabernacle period. The Mishnah, the collection of Jewish oral traditions, provides additional insight into the conduction of the Yom Kippur service from the Second Temple period. Every Yom Kippur, two goats that were sold on the same day for the same price were brought to the eastern gate of the temple. The lots described in Leviticus were pulled out of a wooden box. The high priest prepared the goat assigned to the Lord to be ritually sacrificed on the temple altar. A bowl of the goat's blood was brought into the Holy of Holies and sprinkled along the edge of the curtain and on the incense altar. For the Azazel goat, the priest tied a scarlet-dyed wool thread to its horns. While the worshippers watched, the high priest placed his hands on the live goat, repeated the holy name of God, and imparted Judah's sins onto the goat on behalf of the people. The congregants petitioned God with their own prayers. An appointed priest escorted the goat out of Jerusalem towards the wilderness. He was accompanied by Jerusalem notables, and 10 stations were set up along the way, marking the path for the priest and the goat. He was offered food at each station, but he ceremonially turned down replenishment. Precautions were taken so that the sin-bearing goat would never find his way back. Once the priest reached his destination at a high cliff in the Judean wilderness, a portion of the scarlet thread was removed and tied to a nearby rock. The goat was hurled down a precipice to his death. The witnesses anxiously awaited a report from the priest who inspected the thread. If the thread turned white, the thread symbolized the forgiveness of their sins. If the thread remained scarlet, it meant God had withheld his atonement. The tradition is connected to the Isaiah prophecy, "Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they are red as crimson, they shall be like wool." For a period in Israel's Second Temple history, when the temple priest was well known for his righteousness, the Talmud reports that the thread always turned white. But during the last 40 years of the temple's existence, the thread each year remained scarlet. The temple was destroyed, and the Yom Kippur rites as prescribed in the Bible ended. I do not need to spell out the Messianic overtones in the Yom Kippur service. The writer of Hebrews has already done that for me. Hebrews 9, describing the animal sacrifices conducted in the tabernacle, says, "The law requires that nearly everything be cleansed with blood, and without the shedding of blood there is no forgiveness." Hebrews concludes that if the blood of goats and bulls sanctified the children of Israel year after year, how much more then will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself unblemished to God, cleanse our consciousness from acts that lead to death, so that we may serve the living God. Shabbat Shalom.
Behold how good it is, and how pleasant when brethren dwell